Hello and welcome back. We're going to look at section 2.1 today. We're going to actually start moving into solving algebraic equations. So this is, kind of meat and potato stuff really the heart of the matter when we're doing algebra. And so this is where we're going to start. We're going to do simplifying expressions. So an expression, it's important to know, has no equal sign. Okay, so this is very different from the equations that we're going to see in the coming sections after this one. But an expression has no equal sign. As such, we're not going to be solving these to figure out what x is equal to. We're going to clean up messes, put things together, but we're not going to come up with an answer of something like x is equal to 3. Okay, that's going to be something we do when we have equations which have equal signs in them. All right, so we need to start by talking about like terms. Like terms have the same variables and same exponents. That's really basically it. So I have some examples over here of things that are like terms and things that are not. So examples of things that are like would be things like 7x and 3x. They both have x. Negative 2 and 5. They don't have any variables. They're the same kind of thing. 4x squared, negative 9x squared. Those would be like terms. Things that are not. 3x and 3y. Different letters. Doesn't work that way. 4 and then 2x. Nope. One has a letter, one doesn't. They're not like terms. And finally, 2x and then 5x squared. They have the same letter, they both have x, but one of them has an x squared and one just has an x. So basically, if the letter part doesn't match perfectly, you do not have like terms. So why is that important? I'm glad you asked. Turns out we can only add and subtract like terms. And so that's where we're going to go next. And so, yeah, hang on a second, I'll change the board. All right, so here we have a board where we're going to look at combining like terms. Basically, we're going to add or subtract them. To do that, we're going to add or subtract what are called coefficients. What's a coefficient? It's just the number in front of the letter. Okay, so here I have the term 3x. The 3 is the coefficient. X is the variable, 3 is the coefficient. So let's look at a few examples here. I have 3, and then we'll look at a little bit more complicated ones here in just a second. 5x plus 6x. This really works like I think probably most of you want it to. 5 plus 6 gives us 11, so we can combine those two things into one piece that is 11x. One way to kind of think of this is it's saying, hey, I have 5 apples and I have 6 apples. Together I have 11 apples. Here we have negative 3y plus 4y. Same kind of thing, negative 3 plus 4 is 1, so we get 1y. But just a note, 1y and just plain y are exactly the same thing. In fact, if there isn't a number in front of your letter, it is always a 1. Okay, so that's worth knowing because a lot of times we put just the letter down there and you have to remember that it's just a 1. All right, and then I have my third example here where you'll notice I have a few different kinds of terms. I have 2 pieces that have x in them and I have 2 pieces that do not. So we can put the pieces together even though they're not next to each other, and that's okay. But what we have to be really careful with are the minus signs. Okay, so if it helps, you can go through and change all those minus signs to plus and negative, because then you can see the negative sign really sitting there with that piece. So when I look at this, I see 4x and negative 6x, and I know that 4 plus negative 6 is negative 2, so I get negative 2x. Then I can see negative 3 and negative 8, and I know that that is negative 11, and I'm going to write that as a minus 11. Now you could write it as plus negative 11. I find it a little neater and cleaner just to write it as a minus 11. So, all right, let's look at a few more examples, and these will be just a little bit trickier. All right, so here we have my last 2 examples for this section. There are plenty of other things I could have put up here, but I think these do a pretty good job. So go try a lot of these problems. The more you do, the easier they get, the better you get at it, the more comfortable you feel with it, and generally the better your test goes then. So here we go. 5 parentheses x minus 3 plus 8. All right, so now we have parentheses. We talked about this a little bit in the last chapter. Eventually we want to solve and find x. Again, this is not going to happen here because we don't have an equal sign, but we're heading there. So we're going to want to find x, but it's buried inside of these parentheses. And since x and 3 aren't like terms, we can't put them together. That's just not allowed. So what we have to do is we're going to pull out that distributive property that we looked at back in section 1.5. So we distribute 5 times x is 5x, and 5 times a minus 3 is a minus 15. Notice that my 8 still comes straight down, and it's just still there. I haven't done anything with it yet. So, do yourself a favor, write out these steps that maybe happen in the middle. It'll help you keep track of what you're doing so that you can be more organized and have a better plan and better attack on what's happened, on what you're trying to do. And also, if somebody's grading your homework or grading your test, it gives them an idea as to what you were trying to do, just in case something goes wrong. Okay, and that way, people like me, we can be more helpful for you. Be like, oh, see, right here, this is where you kind of went astray. This is where it didn't work for you, and we can try and help you with that. Okay, but if you don't show those steps, it's really hard to do that. All right, anyway, so I get to here, 5x minus 15 plus 8. Now, the big thing that happens here sometimes, I will frequently see people go, oh, 15 plus 8, that's 23. I get that. I can see it. 15 plus 8, and that's 23. Unfortunately, what's in front of that 15? It is a minus sign. And minus signs, as a rule, belong to whatever comes after them. So this is not just a 15. We can't do 15 plus 8 because that's pretending this is a positive 15. It really is a negative 15. So what I'm really working with is negative 15 plus 8, which is a minus 7. So please be really careful. Minus signs can be the bane of your existence, but I know you can figure them out. All right, let's look at this last example. I have this example. We have 5y and then minus a set of parentheses. So it's worth pointing out here there isn't any number staring at us in front of those parentheses, right? On the last one, we had the 5 in front of the parentheses. It was pretty easy to see that I needed to distribute that 5. Here, on the other hand, there is no number immediately obvious. Well, if there isn't a number in front of those parentheses, you can always put a 1 in, because multiplying anything by 1 doesn't change anything. And so what I see when I look at this is I see a negative 1 times both parts. So negative 1 times 3y gives me the minus 3y, and negative 1 times the 6 gives me the minus 6. And then I can combine my like terms, 5y and minus 3y, to get 2y minus 6. So there you go. I hope this is helpful. This is going to be really important as we move forward into solving equations. And so that's actually the next section. That'll be fun. Thanks.